beautiful, light-filled souls. So happy to be here with you today. And I'm excited to talk to my guest today because a few years ago I was traveling through Santa Fe and I came across the most beautiful artwork in Gurudarshan, and I started chatting and I found out that she had a near-death experience, and I followed her on Instagram and other places, and I thought, what a perfect time to just jump in and see how she is doing amidst the quarantine and lockdown, and if she's in the middle of creating interesting things and artwork and messages for us. But so happy to connect with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Trisha. I really, really appreciate. So good to reconnect with you after so many years.
I know. I have your artwork in one of my videos where I was talking about angels because you were inspired by the other realm, and that is part of the creation of your work. Could you tell me more about how your work harmonizes and balances spaces?
Yeah. So my artwork, they are vibrational activation pieces. They were actually all created when I was recovering from a traumatic brain injury. And I ended up making, I was originally a photographer, and I ended up creating digital compositions with my photographs. So I made them symmetrical. And it was the most soothing thing to my being to have something that had so much order to it. So when the left equaled the right, and then something new was created in the center, it brought me that sense of soothing. And what I later realized from the work, because when you're experiencing a head injury, you start to operate from different places in yourself. Like you have some things removed, but you have also some things given, is what I think. And I was able to really infuse the foundational teachings that I was raised with into this artwork. So I was raised with Kundalini Yoga as my base, and the Kundalini Yoga experience is all about taking the energy that sits at the base of your spine, and then you raise that energy up through your chakra system. So that center line, our central channel as a human being, everything revolves around that. You know, like we're basically symmetrical, if we are. Not everybody is, but we mostly are symmetrical beings, having both hands on each side, both legs on each side, arms, everything. And that central channel is really the pathway for your activation, both through your organ system, through your energetic system. So these pieces, when you mirror your own spine with the artwork, it brings you into balance, and it helps to activate your energy centers when it is activating the space. And I infuse colors, I infuse different locations and settings. They're basically like, they're pictures of nature. So I feel like I'm tuning into the vibration of a location, the energy that each location brings to you. And then I'm creating the new dimension through the symmetry to really kind of build that new world that we are co-creating together.
Beautifully said. And as you were talking, I can't help but want to jump into the story of how you got there, because a lot of the listeners on my program do tune in because of near-death experiences and brushes with death, because these often alter our paths in just the most dramatic of ways. So if you wouldn't mind, could you tell me about the accident and then your recovery from that and your experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I would almost say that the first accident that I made all this art through was my baby accident. And then I had a much bigger accident that happened that I'll share about. But this accident, I was working as a digital photographer at a workshop location that taught photography students. So oftentimes it would be people who were retired. They wanted to finally give themselves the gift of photography. And it was my job to help support the professional photographers who were teaching them and the students to really kind of step into their own creativity and craft. And I actually had a wall fall on me at that location. We were moving the office around and we kind of moved a wall. We thought it was steady, and then it ended up falling on me on the back of my head. And it was a good enough brain injury that I, uh, it was a huge dramatic pause, not unlike what our whole world is going through and has just gone through with the coronavirus and COVID-19. It's like when your whole world comes to a dead standstill, and certain aspects of who I was were still online, but many aspects of who I was were completely shut down. I couldn't even be on the computer. I noticed that being around a bunch of other people, I had this like tremendous gift and curse. Like it opened up some part of me that when I was standing next to a person, I knew everything about them.
So
And
were you taken to the hospital at that time? I mean, were you diagnosed with like severe concussion? Did you have an out of body experience, or was
you
it
know,
just you just energetically were put in a different place after that?
I just had like an energetic, I almost want to, Carlos Castaneda always talks about like in our eggshell, there's that point of perception. And it was almost like my point of perception got like moved or shifted or something like that. I did go to the hospital after, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours because the accident happened. Everything went black. In my mind, I mean, my spirit is so comical. In my mind, my spirit was like, workers' comp, workers' comp. And so when I came to, I was laughing. I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. I was like, oh, that, because I used to make that joke there. I was just like, oh, my fingers hurt, workers' comp. I didn't know what I was really manifesting. I don't wish workers' comp on anybody after going through that. But yeah, my point of perception shifted. My way of being in the world shifted. I could sense and feel and know everything about a person. But imagine going into a room of a restaurant or a coffee shop or any environment where multiple people existed, and it was too much. It was like my energetic sensitivity got so heightened and so tuned in that it was too much information for me to process
Oh,
at the
yeah,
time.
no, I know exactly what you mean. Like after my near-death experience, there were times I would enter a city bus and I was like, okay, that person needs to be in jail. That's a really nice, but yeah, like, I would just know way too much information about people that I passed on the bus and I would feel uncomfortable. So I know what you're talking about.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because it's hard to describe to somebody who hasn't opened themselves up on that level. And it's really, that's the seat of our intuition and our intuitive capacity to be able to, see the unseen and know the unknown. And so I went into a shell. I went into a cocoon, and we could even speak about our collective having to stay home as our cosmic cocoon. We're all having to recall our energy to ourselves. We're having to bring ourselves back to ourselves without that connecting externally and doing the busyness and craziness and pace of life that we've all become accustomed to with our neural pathways. So I worked with a shaman after a few months, and she said, oh my God, the artwork you're going to create is amazing. And I was such a victim at the time. I was like, what are you talking about? I can't pick up a camera. I can't even be on the computer. Like I had gone from being able to teach photography information while I was learning it, like having that mental acuity, to not even being able to like turn on the computer. So, it was a huge shift in what I was used to. And the journey that our psyche has to take when the rug gets pulled out from underneath you is very disconcerting. Our ego has no idea what to do. We're grasping. We're trying to cling on to what was and think that that's, we need to get right back there, but you're never going to be the same, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And after a while, you don't want to be. And that's the hard part. Like in the transition, you think, oh, I just want to go back to being the normal person that I was. And you're like, no, I've been expanded.
Yes. And that's the beauty of it. And, so I started to get expanded because I finally started to make artwork. And it was the most calming thing for me. You know, I couldn't be on the computer for very long. So I just like would sit down for 5 minutes and I would take one image and I would play with it a little bit. And then I'd be like, oh, that feels good. And then, you know, I was able to stay on there for 10 minutes and 20 minutes. And, you know, eventually it became a few hours. So I made this prolific body of work. And I really felt like it was like, this is why I didn't die. This is my new path. I need to share these vibrational healing pieces in the world. And, you know, that was that expansion. It was like, these were the gifts that came out of that. And
but then you had another accident, right? An RV, and how much time passed between that and
yeah, so the first accident was in 2013 in September, and the second accident was in August 2017. I was on my way to go to the solar eclipse gathering, the global solar eclipse gathering. You know, a group of friends were like, come to this amazing event. I had been basically selling my art from the first accident until this event had happened in the summers in downtown Santa Fe, which is where I got to meet you. And everyone said, oh, it's hard to make it as an artist. And I was, you know, but this was divine. This is the gifts into the world. Like, I'm determined to make it happen. And it started to become a little bit of a brute force situation where I was, you know, holding on tight and trying to make it happen. I didn't know until after the second accident that I actually had a head injury the whole time. I hadn't totally healed my brain. I was mostly healed, but there were some things like after a head injury, whatever neural pathways you begin to create, you stay in those ruts. So that's kind of what I did. Like the art at all cost, put all my money and resources into it, hope for the best. And oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. So
it mirrors trauma in many different ways. It's like the brain is that center of that. And when people experience trauma in childhood or other parts of their life, they have coping mechanisms, and then they just, you know, like they get into the same route. And so it really sounds like you were like on that path. You're like, okay, this is the answer.
Yeah, this is the answer. This is how I'm going to make sense of what happened. And I'm going to, through hell or high water, I'm going to stick to it. And I was still very externally based. I was still very much so like, I don't know how else to say it. Yeah, I was very externally based and felt like every time I made a transactional sale or got a compliment or whatever, like I was getting an exchange for honoring the artwork, which was why I was here, but it was all dependent on the external world. And then like what shifted in after the second accident, I mean, like I just got completely slammed. I ended up, I was in an RV. We were on our way to the festival. The guy looked down to turn off the Garmin on the screen, thought he was on a straightaway. He was not. I bounced from the bed that was in the back. I had just gone to the bed to massage my friend's lower back. So we both bounced off through the roof of the RV while it was basically rolling off the road. And there were so many ways in which I could have died. I'm actually, if you look at photos of the accident, it's actually kind of shocking that I didn't die. And we started out the conversation about how you were drawn to the piece with the angels. And I had this sensation that I had two angels with me, and those angels stayed with me through my entire recovery process. Like every single thing that happened, I always had two people there to support me. So it was like the angels kept on taking different forms, but they were there.
So you felt them on the soul level, and their forms would actually change the way they looked?
Well, more like yeah, but it was like different people embodied them more like that. Like it was this reminder that I'm never alone. So the accident, I mean, everything went black. Like one minute you're sitting on a bed and then you're hearing a sound of the vehicle going off the road, but you still don't know what's happening. And then everything went black. And when I came to, I really wondered, like, am I dead? Like, maybe I'm dead right now. So I actually pulled one of my Kundalini yoga mantras. I thought to myself, if I can say this mantra out loud, then I'm alive. So I chanted Waheguru, 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 Waheguru out loud, and I could do it. And so it's like, great. And it means, wow, the ecstasy of consciousness. And as soon as I knew I was not dead, then I turned to my friend, or at least yelled for her. And I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? It took her a little while to respond. And she's like, no, I'm okay. And then we both tried to get up, and I tried to get up and I couldn't get up. And that was the moment that I thought I was paralyzed. I thought, this is the moment I became paralyzed. You know, like everyone always says your life can change in one blink of an eye, but when it actually does. And then when I thought I couldn't get it out of my mind, I was like, oh my God, I'm totally paralyzed. This is crazy. And I wasn't. I just ended up having a hip replacement. I ended up degloving my hand. So I have this really beautiful, I don't think you can see it. It's healed tremendously. So I have this nice little eclipse that I carry along with me. And I fractured 2 vertebrae, and I got a second head injury. But it was crazy, you know, like immediately after the accident happened, 2 people came up. They had been following us. So they came up with flashlights, and it was this one younger man, and then this woman from Australia. She walks up and she's looking at me, and I'm on the ground, and I'm holding it together thinking, oh my God, did I just, become paralyzed? And she says to me, you are such a strong woman. You are such a strong woman. And literally in that moment, my body, my spirit came into my body. I think I've actually been like living with my spirit outside of my body for the last 30 years. Before this accident happened, I had some childhood trauma, checked me out. I think I, bypassed a lot of stuff. I just kind of was cruising and not really in my body the whole time. And this accident brought me in completely.
Wow, funny. And that's fascinating, because normally people leave their body in an accident, and that moment with her brought you back to yourself. It's almost like she called you back, the way many shamans do.
She called me. Yeah. She was asking me to be here now, show up. And also pain can bring you into your body. Pain, when you get that connected to yourself, I feel like it's profound. And the body is such a fascinating thing, because I had so many body image issues. I had so much self-sabotaging beliefs around I was too fat, I was unlovable. But it's funny. That was the thought actually that happened right before the accident.
That's so funny that you said, I'm not funny, but to me, it's funny, because when you go through a major accident, all those things that worried you before don't matter, because you're focusing on healing. It's funny to me, because I used to be obsessed with these women that had really thin calves, and I had kind of muscular, athletic runners, calves. And after my accident, all I could think about was I can walk. I could care less what my calves look like. And it's that great gratitude for the body comes back. Oh, everybody is unique and beautiful, and let's just love ourselves.
Yes, 100%. And I actually really truly believe that these near-death experiences, these accidents, these tremendous sicknesses that come out of nowhere and affect us, they are the opportunity to learn about self-love. And I feel like in my first accident, I was able to make this work of art outside of myself. But the second accident was all about making me the work of art. And I even recall in the hospital thinking, oh my God, I'm not too fat, I'm unlovable. This is the only vessel that I have to live with. This is it. And I'm going to love this so fully, because even if it's broken right now, it's the only one I have. And it's the only one that's going to hold this spirit of mine that's not just this small little tiny girl. She's actually like as big as the whole entire room. Like, if I'm big now, it's because I'm trying to contain my big spirit, you know? So, you know, it's, there's all of these hidden gifts in our healing journey.
Yeah, and we were chatting a little bit before this, and you were talking about the jewels of wisdom, the many mining the jewels of wisdom, and what what could you give to other people who may be suffering right now, or may be sick right now, or are dealing with an illness? Because certainly I come across several people who do follow me, and they're trying to heal their own bodies. What did you
Yes.
learn from this?
Well, you know, I started to notice a pattern with what would happen. I feel like I faced the impossible over and over and over and over again. I actually would call my experience as being in jail. Like, I had a neck brace on me for about 3 months, 4 months. I couldn't walk. I basically couldn't walk for about 9 months. I had to learn how to do that again. I was in so much pain. I even came back from the hospital in Oregon. I was there for 12 days and then got flown back to New Mexico. And I didn't even have like doctors or physical therapy lined up for me, you know? And I was trying to operate without a brain, without a body, and still try to get things done. And be facing things over and over. So when I didn't have a doctor, I didn't have an advocate, I didn't have physical therapy lined up, every time I would call the doctor's office, they said, no, we're booked out 4 months. And I'm like, but I need to start this practice now. And what I started to do, I learned this formula, and I'm actually in the process of, I'll be teaching, webinars and classes using this formula to get through challenge, to face the most insurmountable experiences. Even people who have all of a sudden lost their jobs, have had to stay at home, their whole neural pathways of how they were living their lives have been completely rearranged and shifted. These techniques can really help. And the first thing to do is surrender. Because we love resisting, right? Like, oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, like you're resisting it. You're fighting it. You don't want it to happen that way. I was resisting and fighting the fact that I didn't have a doctor lined up and that I didn't have physical therapy. And what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Oh my God, and you try to brute force things, but it's all from that place of resistance. And I really do think that which we resist will persist. But if you surrender and if you accept the now moment, all that's showing up for you right now, right here and now, that's the first step to really just being with. Like, you have been put into a situation. It feels like the hardest, most challenging situation that you faced. First step is be with it. Be fully with it. Like, look that in the face and smile and face it and be like, here we are, you and me, baby,
You and me without a doctor.
Exactly. You and me, and now I can't walk, and here we are. Oh my God, what happened? So when you surrender and accept, and I think the way to accept things, I learned this from a healer who I've worked with for years. He always said gratitude plus honor will equal acceptance. So when you have gratitude for the situation, I'm grateful I don't yet have the doctor. I'm grateful that I'm in this situation, even though it appears to be like the worst thing I've ever faced. I'm going to honor myself for going through it. For some reason, my soul, my spirit has called upon this very challenging lesson, and I honor myself for showing up, for having the grit to face it and to be with it. And that's what allows that acceptance to happen. So once you can just learn to be with that moment, surrender and accept it fully, then I really suggest to go and you got to go within. It's all an inside job. We think we can externally, if I call enough people, I can get the right answer. It's not even about that. Going within yourself, you have so much access to your spirit's connection to the divine, to the all that is. And when we're externally focused, looking outside all of the time, we're not able to like deeply listen to what is happening inside. And in that process of turning in, I really found myself like getting clarity. Like, well, what do I actually need right now? Well, I need a physical therapist who's going to come to my home and help me out. Well, in order to get the physical therapist, I need the doctor to write the prescription for the physical therapist. How am I going to get the doctor? Well, I really just need like an advocate. I need somebody who's going to help me navigate this because I'm broken and I can't think and I don't know how this works. And, you know, I got really clear. I often would just get so clear about what I needed that everything else faded out. And I think it's like the law of attraction. Like when you're so super focused on exactly the one thing, the one next step that you need to do, it really just will. Did you just lose me?
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, there was a little glitch, but yeah, it's
Okay.
we're cool. But yeah, that asking for what you need and that clear focus is really important. And it takes concentration and meditation. And, you know, I have this part in my book where I say it took an entire month to manifest one little scene. You know, like, and that's like, you know, a month of meditating on something. So that's a lot of work. So people maybe give up too soon, but you know, it can be done. It just takes time and effort in that space.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing is because it is an inside job, it's an inner dialogue that you can have with yourself, with your spirit. And I really truly believe like if you can work things out in your spirit first, even if it takes a little while for it to show up on the outside, it will still show up from the outside. Yeah.
That, you know, why not have patience? Because when you're healing, you learn to have patience. And I think Joe Dispenza and Anita Morjani and so many people talk about this. You have time. You know, what else are you going to do? You know, you might as well work on it.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I think it's recognizing like you not only have time, but you also have power. And I think we live in a society where we're continually disempowered. And it starts from a very early age, you know, like the adults are the ones who have the power. The adults are ones who have to make the decision. And then as you go through life, you realize those adults were just little children trying to make decisions. They've just grown up into their adult self, but you know, they're not necessarily acting with my best interest in mind, or maybe sometimes they don't even know what the right thing is. And they're just trying to, you know, do the best that they can. And one of my coaches once said to me the most profound thing. He said, the biggest power we have is to choose our own slavery. And that's slavery to everything. Like I can be enslaved to a gluten-free diet. And that gluten-free diet make me feel like I don't get the comfort I need, or it might make me feel like, wow, this is really supporting my body. This is the way I have to live. But there's all of these things, all of these choices we make all of the time to choose what we are going to be enslaved to. And when you get put in the situation of recovering from something, being in an accident, having an illness, having a chronic health condition, having your external circumstances change, then you realize that then you're in a new form of jail or enslavement. And so where do you go from there? And how do you get out of it? And it is that inside job.
So once you got really deep with the process, how did things start unfolding and changing?
The next day, a friend of mine, her mother called me and said, I will help you navigate this system. I actually have been trying to call you for a week because I can help you do this. And I was like, what? Because I actually had lost my head injury made me, I didn't remember anything for about 2 years. Like it was kind of like 51st dates, like every day was a new day. So things would happen or people would communicate things to me and then I would just totally forget it. There was no memory at all. So yeah, so it just started to show up. And I felt like the gift of that is that I actually can move the mountain from within myself. And I really believe that everything has its gift. It wouldn't be in your field, it wouldn't be in your here now experience if there wasn't something here for you to learn, if there wasn't some juicy morsel of evolution and experience that you get to take forward and integrate into who you are. And, you know, another thing is when I felt like I was in jail and I was so frustrated, and I mean, my life became this rigid form of rehab and recovery. I had to do body exercises, my physical therapy. I had to do brain exercises. I had to eat the right vitamins. I had to, go to physical therapy, go to this doctor, go to that doctor. I had all of these things. And I really thought most of it was just futile. I was like, why do I have to do this every day? What is the point of doing this? I mean, it was my leg, but this is just like a basic movement. And this is what the physical therapy people were talking about. I thought it was so stupid. I really was like, most of the time, like, really, that's on my program today. But what I realized is that the only way to get out of jail is your daily repeated behavior and habits. Like the sum of who you are is everything that you do every day. So what's your morning rituals? What are your evening rituals? What do you eat both in your meals, but also mentally with the information and input that comes to you? How are you choosing to live every day? How are you letting your mind control you? Or are you letting it be your servant? You have the choice here.
That is so important for people right now who are kind of locked up with themselves and, can observe, like without judgment. I've observed myself and I've observed how if I look at Twitter before bedtime at what's trending around, I get anxious and wound up and have bad dreams. And I thought, I do not need to look at Twitter before bedtime.
Yes. I have the same thing with my media channels as well. And I think especially now we have to be so mindful of what is the input and what are we doing about it. For example, right now, it's funny because the whole world being in lockdown, I'm like, I'm still living my life because my whole world went on lockdown after my accident. And I have now realized, like, what are all the things I need to do every single day that are going to nourish me? And that self-care practice eventually equaled self-love. And now that self-love has translated into really healthy boundaries for myself. And with those boundaries, I get to choose what comes in and what goes out. So it's all this kind of like, and it's not going to be directed by anybody else. Like we can say to anybody, hey, you probably don't want to watch, read Twitter right before bed. But really it's about the person's own connection with their spirit. It's all of our own connection with our spirit. And ultimately we have all the wisdom that we could possibly need to help us make it through every day. That's what's so important about turning into yourself. And, meditation is so annoying. Like, that's why I made art that is, these meditation pieces so you could look outside and at least still be engaged in a visual way. Because it's, I don't know, it's not always fun, but it's where you get the answers,
Every human being is unique in the way that they interact with the world and with situations. And so, that wisdom of it's going to be different for this person's reality and another person's reality. And that's so beautiful. Do you feel divinely guided? Do you feel that, when you're in this space of either creating art or just in this oneness, do you feel that you get guidance from that other realm?
Yeah, the exciting thing is here we are it's almost 3 years later. I'm at like 2 years and 3/4, time has passed, and I only just got my camera and my tripod out and went into the middle of the desert and took photographs of myself for the first time since the accident had happened. And it's an act of stepping into the role of the observer. And for me, that's my medicine, right? Like, I have a certain way that I like to see things. I have a certain expression of beauty that I'm drawn to. I love to go out into nature and see what the land is presenting. And, whether it's me or another model, to craft the reality in a place that is honoring like the God self and the God moment, is the most empowering place for me to be. And when I go into those places of creativity, or when I sit down to try to like make art on my computer, I drop into kind of a no zone. It's not where my ego is running everything or my needs are trying to be met. It's more of a receptive state. And it's that same state, I think, that I learned how to get into when I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get up and go do. I couldn't actually brute force anything in my life to happen. I instead had to sit and be still and envision what I wanted and then see what shows up. And it's kind of like that with the creative process as well. Like, I'm just following along, but I'm still enough to listen to where it wants to take me.
Do you think that your purpose has changed? Because all that time sitting with oneself and being in that reflective state, do you feel like a greater sense of purpose now? Do you feel like it's evolving and you're following it? Or, a lot of people kind of wonder, especially in this time of change, like, what's my real purpose? What am I meant to be doing?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question. It's actually something I ask myself all the time. In fact, the form that it came in after the accident, when I, thought I was on timeout for so long, was, why am I alive? What's the point? Why am I here? It was half snarky. I'm not going to lie. I was pretty miserable. I was definitely suffering a lot. I was pissed off that I couldn't get up and run away or, change everything the way I wanted it to be at the flip of the hat. That is the question. Why are we here? What are we here to do? How are we here to serve? What impact are we making? At one point, my mom was saying that I needed to start working again, and my brain was still not healed. And I was like, so did I not die so I could come back and be an Uber driver? Like, because it really made me ask the question, like, well, why am I here? What is this about? What am I here for? And I look at that all cautiously, because I really thought that I had this great purpose and this great contribution after the first accident and making the artwork. And then, of course, the artwork had to support me. It had to be so sustainable. But now I can say that I'm reflecting on, how can I help people liberate themselves?
I love it. Isn't it amazing? It's almost like I feel like some higher force shifts us away. You're reminding me of, I interviewed Howard Storm, and he was in his near-death experience. He was talking to God, and he was an artist. He's like, oh, okay, I'm going to come back. I'm going to create a great big artwork for you, God, and it's going to reflect you. And God said, no, I don't want that. I don't need any art. What I need you to do is to love the person you're with, love that person right in front of you, and tell them about me. And so I think that empowering others, that's often that final step of like liberation from the self and from worrying. It's like, all right, my real purpose is to help others. I kind of came to the same conclusion. I wrote this book, and I was like, oh, the book is going to like really touch me. And it has touched some people, but that's not the point, and I definitely can't make a living from the book. I'd be on the streets. It is really about just touching people, through these interviews, through whatever it is that I do, teaching, and all these things are about how can I help liberate and uplift and raise the elevation of others.
Yeah. And I think especially in these times, that we have right in front of us. You know, a lot of people who've been on the spiritual journey and the spiritual path have cultivated aspects of themselves, and maybe now here is the time to support people. You know, maybe when everybody now is experiencing this level of constriction and confinement, and I was talking to my 98-year-old grandma over a video chat, and she has been quarantined to her room in the nursing home. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, wow, Grandma, you're kind of in jail right now. Like, you don't have the pleasure of walking through the halls. I mean, you could say she's in jail living in a nursing home, but, you know, they get to at least interact normally. And right now she doesn't have the gift and the pleasure of going and, you know, getting that feedback from the other. And that's the thing about confinement and being limited. I think we can look at it as a jail, or we can look at it as the path to liberation within ourselves.
Yes, and
You know?
I feel that some of us have been like maybe more prepared for this than others. You made the joke about, you know, being quarantined or ready because of your injury. I
Yeah.
grew up poor in the country, isolated from everyone, and just like one phone call from a friend was amazing when I was a kid. And so I understand like the power of just really appreciating each moment and knowing that your soul can be connected with everyone, even if your body isn't out doing the same things that you're used to doing.
Yeah, and I think we actually have all been hypnotized to think that our body is the beginning and the end, you know? And when, I don't know, I was listening to some speaker yesterday, and she was like, oh, this is so amazing. We're all so isolated and we're far apart from each other, but actually our capacity to connect from our intuition and from our psychic space actually has the opportunity to increase right now, because there is that different focus. We're not focusing on moving our body through three-dimensional time and space. We're actually now getting to see where our mind can travel, where our consciousness can travel through the choices that we make. You know, is it going to be my Facebook feed? Is it going to, I mean, something that's come up is I got exposed to all the conspiracy theories that are up right now about what's really happening, because a lot of things haven't really made sense to me. And I went down this rabbit hole where I was like, oh my God, so it's these people versus these people, and this is why this is happening, and you know, I went down the like understanding of what some people on the planet believe. And it could be the total downfall of the controlling matrix, disempowerment, you know, enslavement, all of those things. That could very well be happening. But, you know, whether that's happening or whether we are, you know, up against an invisible virus that's going to take anybody and attack anybody, you know, it's really like a protein chain that we're up against. You know, we're up against, whether we're up against climate change, you know, really it comes back to like, well, what am I going to do with it?
Yes, yes, and that's the post that came up on my feed that you reposted from someone about go to nature, whatever it is you believe. You know, if Mother Earth is trying to take us out, you know, if
Yeah.
whatever the theory is, it really doesn't matter. What matters, we can all, a friend of mine, Criselda Pacheco, always says, we can all agree that fire burns you and water's wet. You know, like we can start there with the truth, and nature's kind of the truth. You know, in my near-death experience, I heard remind them to go to nature. You want a better immune system? Go to nature. Start eating, growing some herbs on your porch. Start really nourishing yourself deeply, and we'll figure it out. You know, I'm an academic, so I'm like, we might not know till 10 years from now. You know, then we'll be looking back to this time and go, oh, that's what that was.
Well, the beauty of that is that when we go to nature and when we work with the land, we are literally nourishing the earth that ultimately supports us. None of us would be alive without Mother Earth. You know, we're literally like consciousness floating around with these like meat spacesuits. And how we're sustained in this reality is because of water, fire, air, earth. You know, all of these elements are conspiring to support who we are. And I think that we have really lived so long in the paradigm of raping and taking advantage of the earth and treating her and our own bodies with toxicity, all for the greater good of corporate greed, and, you know, enslavement and disempowerment and control. And my new mission, you know, you asked me, like, has my path changed? And really the way it's changed, it's gotten down to like a cellular matrix within myself. You know, not only did I have to like heal my body, and my body has so much innate wisdom, but it's led me on this path of like, I want to even just take care of my cellular health. Like how are my feet connecting to this earth? How am I getting the resonance of the earth to heal my body? And I've been using therapies, pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapies. You lie in a bed, it charges your cellular health. You know, if all of my cells, if they're too toxic, if they're not energized enough, then they're not going to be detoxing. And if I'm walking around with all this toxicity, and I am a microcosm of the earth as a macrocosm, imagine how much toxicity is in, you know, each one of the cellular matrix of this planet, of each other humans, of this earth right now. And how are we actually bringing it back and healing the Mother Earth? And
Yes.
it's through our own self-care, you know?
I've been thinking about this for a long time, like probably a decade, and I've been encouraging my students to start community gardens, participate in them. Some of them have gone off to work in organic farms. And I thought, you're winning, you know, and then now I know you really are winning. You're ahead of us by doing that. And, you know, just that participation that I've seen with younger people doing these things has just been like I have a sigh of relief for everyone who's gone and done that, you know, and listened to the ways of nature, that really we have gotten out of step with it. I'm pretty certain that I was Native American in past lives. I've done some regressions around that. So I've always felt like, can't we bring the wisdom of what was here in America with what is happening now? Can't we just embrace technology, but also have this great love and admiration for nature? Can't we bring these two wonderful things together and create a better society? And that's really my hope moving forward, that that's what we do.
Yeah, I truly believe that right now, you know, with the same pathway that I laid out, that I learned from my healing journey, if we can accept what is and surrender and go inside and really get clear about what we want to be birthing into this new paradigm, into the Aquarian age, into this new consciousness of harmony and connectivity and peace. And, you know, it's not about, you know, one person continually needing more and needing more and needing more. It's about how are we in community with one another? How can we, you know, speaking of Native American, you know, they would slaughter an animal, and they would use all parts of the animal, not just the one part that they, you know, could package perfectly. And, you know, how do we ultimately like use all aspects of what we are given? You know, I think what a great opportunity. Like, everybody is really aware of all the things in their house right now that they found so important. And in fact, early on in quarantine, I was like, oh, what do I need? I had this thing where I had put off my needs for so long because they weren't that priority. And then I was like, what if we're locked in our houses, you know, for months and months and months? And oh my God, I forgot to buy underwear, you know. Like, I forgot to buy a new pair of shoes so I can go, you know, walking just like right outside of my house. Like, what are the things you actually need, and what are the things that are no longer serving you? And how can you really release and clear and let go of that so other people can enjoy those things? You know, we have this overconsumption mentality, this need to fill ourselves, when ultimately, if you can get clear about like what really brings you joy, that is ultimately what your liberation is. Like, when I have been in the most, you know, darkest days of depression, like, I realized just going outside and walking in nature was my utmost medicine.
And I'm so glad that you and I and so many people know this, but I work with some young kids who, Generation Z kids, 17, 18, 19, who really struggle with anxiety and depression. And it sounds so foreign to them to go sit under a tree. And I've tried to explain it to them that, like, I've gotten over major trauma from, 5 nights under a tree. That's all I did is I sat and I cried under a tree and let the tree helped heal me, like nature
Good
helped
for
heal
her.
me. And
Yeah.
they think I'm insane, and then they go back to their video games. But I'm like, I'm going to keep saying it until it gets into their consciousness. And I hope now they learn to go sit out in the backyard.
Yeah, I think it's really, it's what is anxiety really? Anxiety is a fear and a worry over something that isn't even here. It's over the future. And depression is oftentimes fear or worry over something in the past. And both places you're not here. And the gift of being in nature is that you have to be here now. I am always looking to see if there's a snake under my foot. I am tracking the weather to see if it's going to rain on me. I am very much engaged in my environment. And I think the biggest gift, once again, is instead of trying to run away from it, reject it, resist it, avoid it, how can you really show up and be fully present in the here and now, no matter what those limitations are, no matter what the shape of your jail cell looks like, because it's going to keep on changing form. And if you can free yourself, and I feel like that's why nature is so potent. I mean, she teaches you the ways. We go through cycles, we even, as ancient people, we wouldn't get, we couldn't go to the grocery store. We couldn't like get the same meal all the time. And, I have my, my popsicles and my quesadillas and my whatever. No, you would have, this food would come during this season. And sometimes you would then go into like a famine for a while. And then, an animal would show up and you would get to feast. Like there's all of these cycles at play. And I think that's what's so important about going back to the earth. It's recognizing those cycles and that we are the earth. We are of the earth.
Yeah.
And that's, you just have to be with it.
It's a beautiful place to end, and I just want to remind people to check the links beneath this video or podcast if you're listening, to check out the beautiful artwork that you do, but also the offerings that you'll have, and to remind others that I'm going to have the 3rd annual Near-Death Experience Summit online and gathering people around the world to talk about these types of moments and changes that many of us are going through. But thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and story with me and my audience.
Thank you so much, Trisha. It's such an honor to be here. And thank you so much for doing the work you're doing in the world. It's so important.